All right, let's dive into something pretty cool today.
Sounds good.
We're going to be talking about the Louis Vuitton
Cool.
Takashi Murakami collaboration.
Yes.
It's back for round 2.
Yay.
And we've got a great article from QOI Mag that really gets into the heart of it.
Cool.
It's been 20 years since this iconic pairing first hit the scene.
Crazy.
What you think sparked this resurgence? It's been so long.
Well, I think it's really fascinating to see how this re-release plays with that idea of nostalgia, I mean, think back to the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
When this collaboration first came out, it was a major turning point. It really, blurred the lines between high fashion and art in a way that we hadn't really seen before.
Absolutely. It was huge.
It was.
Murakami's vibrant pop art aesthetic on those classic Louis Vuitton bags, it totally shook things up.
Yeah.
What's interesting now is that they've brought Zendaya on board as the face of the campaign.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a strategic move to kind of tap into that Gen Z market, or is there something more to it?
Well, I think it's definitely strategic.
Yeah.
I mean, Zendaya has this huge influence on younger generations, right?
Yeah.
But it's also just a really smart choice aesthetically. Her personal style really embodies that same spirit of playfulness and rule breaking that Murakami brought to Louis Vuitton in the first place.
Right.
It's like they're saying, this isn't your grandma's Louis Vuitton.
Yeah, I love that. It makes me think about that quote from Zendaya in the article. A fashion rule I always break. I guess we don't believe in those anymore. It feels like such a direct challenge to the old guard of the fashion world.
100%.
Yeah.
And it gets to the heart of what makes this collaboration so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about the bags. It's about challenging perceptions, pushing boundaries, and maybe even poking fun at the seriousness of the luxury world a little bit.
Totally. Now, I know our listeners are pretty savvy when it comes to art and fashion, but for anyone who needs a quick refresher, what would you say are the essential elements of Murakami's super flat style that we see reflected in this collection?
So the key thing to remember about super flat is this idea of flattening the boundaries between high and low culture.
Okay.
So Murakami draws inspiration from traditional Japanese art, anime, manga, even street art. And he kind of mashes it all together in this incredibly vibrant and playful way. You see that in the bold colors, the whimsical characters, and the way he plays with the repetition and patterns.
Yeah, and we see all of that in this Louis Vuitton collection, right?
Totally.
The Speedy and Alma bags are back, of course, but this time around, they've kind of gone beyond just handbags.
Right.
They've got skateboards,
Yeah.
perfume bottles, even keychains, all with that signature Murakami touch.
Yeah.
What do you make of this expansion into a full-blown lifestyle collection?
I mean, it's brilliant, right? It's a way to make Murakami's art more accessible.
Yeah.
I mean, not everyone can afford a limited edition Murakami Louis Vuitton handbag.
Right.
But they might be able to snag a keychain or a skateboard.
Right.
Yeah.
It sort of democratizes the art a little bit.
Exactly.
Which is really interesting when you're talking about a luxury brand like Louis Vuitton.
Right.
It makes me think about how luxury itself has kind of evolved over the past 20 years. It's not just about exclusivity anymore. It's about experience. It's about making a statement.
Yeah, and it's about creating a world that people want to be a part of.
Yeah.
The article in QOI Mag talks about the campaign imagery, the palm trees, the vibrant cityscapes. It's like they've created this whole visual universe that you can step into, even if it's just through owning a piece of the collection.
Totally. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not just about owning a product, it's about buying into a whole aesthetic, a whole vibe.
Exactly.
What's fascinating is how they've managed to bring that same energy back 20 years later, but with a fresh perspective.
Right. And that's where the reinterpretation comes in.
Yeah.
They're not just replicating the original pieces.
Yeah.
They're tweaking them, adding new elements, playing with the original designs in a way that feels both familiar and new.
Yeah. Speaking of new, they've also introduced a few limited edition items that I'm sure are going to be instant collector's items.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had a chance to take a look at those?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's the LVXTM side trunk, the Micro Alma in monogram multicolor, a Speedy Bandolier, all incredibly coveted pieces.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's that amazing skateboard featuring Murakami's super flat characters.
Yeah, those limited edition pieces really add to the hype and the exclusivity surrounding the collection. Yeah, and it keeps people talking. I mean, 20 years later,
Yeah.
we're still dissecting this collaboration, still finding new layers to unpack. It's proof that when art and fashion collide in just the right way, it can create something truly iconic.
And something that stands the test of time,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty remarkable in the ever-changing world of fashion.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to ask, is this just a clever marketing ploy capitalizing on nostalgia? Or is there something more substantial at play?
That's a great question. And I think to answer that, we need to take a closer look at the cultural impact of both the original collaboration and this re-release. What do you say we dive into that next?
Let's do it. The cultural impact
Yeah.
of this collaboration, both the original and this re-release, is definitely something worth exploring.
Yeah,
I mean, in 2003, this partnership was groundbreaking.
it was.
Back then,
Yeah.
luxury brands were all about exclusivity,
Right.
almost like an untouchable image.
Yeah.
And then Murakami comes in with his bright colors,
Yeah.
cartoon characters, and playful energy, and
It flipped the script.
really flipped the script. Yeah.
It did. Suddenly, luxury felt more approachable, more fun. I remember seeing those Murakami Louis Vuitton bags everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Celebrities, musicians, even people just walking down the street. It felt like a real shift was happening.
It was a democratization of luxury imagery in a way.
Yeah.
Before that, high fashion felt very separate from everyday life.
Right.
But this collaboration brought those worlds closer together.
Yeah,
And I think that had a huge impact on streetwear and pop culture as a whole.
absolutely. And what's interesting now with this re-release is how the context has changed.
Yeah.
It's not so much about breaking new ground. It's more about how they're playing with nostalgia and reinterpretation.
Exactly. It's about how they're tapping into that feeling of excitement
Mm.
from the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
but also giving it a contemporary twist.
Right.
And Zendaya's involvement speaks volumes about how they're approaching that.
Mm.
She's not just a face, she's a fashion icon
Mm.
who really embodies that fearless, rule-breaking spirit.
Right. It's like she's a bridge between the original impact of the collaboration and how it resonates with a new generation today.
Exactly.
And it's not just Zendaya. The collection itself has evolved. We talked about the new product categories. But even the classic bags have been reimagined.
Yeah.
They're playing with new colorways, new materials, even subtle tweaks to the designs.
It's a smart strategy to appeal to both longtime fans and newcomers.
Right?
The diehard collectors get that hit of nostalgia,
Yeah.
and those who are new to Murakami's work are discovering it within the context of a brand they already admire.
Totally. And let's be real, the limited edition pieces are a stroke of genius.
Oh,
It creates a sense of urgency, a
Yeah.
desire to be part of something exclusive, even within a collection that's already pretty exclusive.
it's marketing gold.
Yeah.
By creating these highly coveted items, they're ensuring that the conversation around the collaboration continues, both in the fashion world and in the wider cultural landscape.
Okay. That said, it would be remiss not to acknowledge that there's been some pushback. Some critics argue that this re-release is just another example of a luxury brand capitalizing on nostalgia for profit.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's a valid point, and I think it's a conversation we should be having.
Yeah.
Is this just a cynical cash grab? Or is there genuine artistic merit to it? I think it's important to remember that Murakami is a respected artist
Yeah.
whose work has been showcased in major museums worldwide.
Right, and this collaboration gives his work a different kind of platform, reaching an audience that might not otherwise engage with contemporary art. It makes it accessible in a way that's pretty unique.
It does. It challenges our preconceived notions
Mhm.
of where art belongs, how it's consumed, and who has access to it, which is a conversation Murakami himself has been engaging in throughout his career.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered the historical context,
Mm.
the cultural impact, even some of the criticisms. But I'm curious to hear your personal take on this. As someone deeply immersed in the world of art and fashion, what resonates most with you about this re-release?
For me, it's the dialogue this collaboration creates.
Oh.
It forces us to think critically about the relationship between art, fashion, and consumer culture.
Mm-hmm.
Are we buying into hype, or are we genuinely appreciating the artistic vision behind it? It's a question without easy answers.
It's true. And it makes me think about the power of visual storytelling.
Yes.
From the campaign imagery to the designs themselves, this collaboration is a feast for the eyes. It's like they're not just selling products, they're selling a feeling and experience.
And that experience is what makes it so compelling. It's about stepping into this whimsical world
Hmm.
where high and low culture collide, where art and fashion become intertwined. And it's fascinating to see how that concept is being reinterpreted and recontextualized for a new generation.
It really is. We've talked a lot about what this collaboration is. But I think it's just as important to consider what it means. What kind of legacy will it leave behind?
That's the million-dollar question, I think, on a practical level.
Yeah.
We'll continue to see its influence in the way brands approach collaborations and how they integrate art into their products and marketing. This playful, experiential approach to luxury is only going to grow.
And how do you think it will shape the way future generations perceive both Murakami's art and the Louis Vuitton brand?
That's an interesting thought. For some, this might be their entry point into Murakami's work, sparking a lifelong interest in contemporary art. For others, it might cement Louis Vuitton's image as a brand that pushes boundaries and takes risks, even 2 decades after a groundbreaking collaboration.
It's also interesting to consider how this re-release fuels the debate about the intersection of art and commerce. Where do we draw the line between artistic expression and commercialization?
It's a question that's more relevant than ever. As these kinds of collaborations become increasingly common, does owning a piece of this collection make you a patron of the arts? Or simply a consumer of expertly marketed luxury?
That's a question I think everyone will have to answer for themselves. And I think that's a perfect place to wrap up this part of our deep dive. But we're not done yet. When we come back, we'll explore some of the most coveted pieces from the collection and what makes them so special. Okay, so we're back and ready to kind of like get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, let's do it.
You know, we've talked about the cultural impact, the evolution of the collaboration. Now let's talk about like the actual pieces themselves.
Right.
I'm particularly interested in those limited edition items.
Yeah.
They always seem to generate the most buzz.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's just a certain thrill to owning something rare, something that not everyone has access to.
Right.
And when you combine that with the artistic value of like a Murakami piece
Right.
and the heritage of the Louis Vuitton brand, well, it's no wonder these pieces become instant collector's items.
Totally. So what are some of the standouts? Which pieces are going to have people like clamoring to get their hands on them?
Well, there are quite a few. We touched on a few earlier, but let's dive in a little deeper. The LVX TM side trunk, for instance, is a real showstopper.
Okay.
It's a reinterpretation of a classic Louis Vuitton trunk.
Yeah.
But covered in Murakami's signature monogram multicolor canvas.
Wow.
It's a statement piece for sure.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. And it really speaks to that idea of like blending heritage with contemporary art. It's like taking something old and making it new again.
Right.
And in a really thoughtful way.
Exactly. And then there's the micro Alma in monogram multicolor.
Oh.
It's a miniature version of the iconic Alma bag,
Oh.
but adorned with Murakami's vibrant flower motifs.
Cute.
It's playful, it's collectible, and it's a great example of how Murakami's aesthetic can translate to even the smallest of accessories.
Yeah, I love how these pieces manage to be both luxurious and playful. At the same time, it's a delicate balance to strike.
It is.
What else is catching your eye?
Well, the Speedy Bandolier 25 is another must-have.
Okay.
It's a classic Speedy bag, but again with the multicolor canvas. And those iconic smiling flowers. Right. It's a piece that's both timeless and incredibly of the moment. And for those who are looking for something truly unique, there's the super flat panda bag charm.
Oh, yeah.
It's this whimsical panda character rendered in Murakami's signature style. And it's the perfect way to add a touch of personality to any bag.
And of course, we can't forget about that amazing skateboard. It's such an unexpected item for a luxury brand like Louis Vuitton to release, but it totally works.
It does. It speaks to the evolution of both the brand and the luxury market as a whole.
Yeah.
There's a sense of playfulness, a willingness to experiment and break down traditional boundaries.
Yeah.
And it also reflects Murakami's own interest in street culture and how it intersects with high art.
It's a great example of how this collaboration manages to be so many things at once.
It really is.
It's nostalgic, it's contemporary, it's playful, it's thought-provoking. I think that's what makes it so enduring. It sparks conversation, it challenges perceptions, and it ultimately leaves a lasting impression.
I couldn't agree more. It's a collaboration that continues to resonate even 2 decades after its initial release. And I think that speaks volumes about the power of art, the allure of luxury, and the magic that happens when those two worlds collide.
Well said. This has been an incredible deep dive. And I want to thank you for sharing your insights and expertise with us. I know our listeners have learned a lot.
The pleasure was all mine. It's always a joy to discuss a topic that sparks so much passion and debate.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, If you're as intrigued by this collection as we are, I encourage you to check it out for yourself on the Louis Vuitton website. We'll be sure to include a link in the show notes.
And as you explore the collection, keep those questions we've been discussing in mind. What does this collaboration say about the evolving relationship between art and fashion? How does it play with nostalgia and reinterpretation? And ultimately, what does it mean to you?
So much to ponder. It just goes to show sometimes a handbag is more than just a handbag. It can be a work of art, a cultural artifact, a conversation starter, and so much more. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Louis Vuitton x Takashi Murakami. Until next time, stay curious,